Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to Enshrouded. So this is a brand new survival crafting game that has come out just this week, launched into early access on Wednesday, and I've had a bit of time playing around with it. We've done a live stream on it on Wednesday night, which I will link somewhere around if you want to take a look at something a little bit more long form. And I've had a fair bit of time pottering around, trying things out myself as well, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far. So a little bit of disclosure before we dive in any further. I did get a Steam key for this one, very much appreciated. That very much helps me out. However, the devs have not asked for anything other than using a hashtag here and there, so other than that, they've had no input into what I'm saying, so yeah, there's your little disclosure. I can say basically whatever I like, can't I? Which is always great. So, what I want to say is, I'm really enjoying this so far. It's cool. There's a lot of comparison out there at the moment so far with two things. Firstly, one obvious thing in Valheim, which makes sense, as it is a somewhat visually similar sort of a game, and Valheim's the other big success story in the last few years. And also, it's had comparisons with Souls-like games, which is a slightly more weird comparison. So, looking at that one first, the Souls-like comparison, it's not Souls-like at all. It has, apparently, big bosses in it that have fairly epic fights, and they're supposed to be somewhat challenging. I've not actually got into any of those fights yet, so I've got a lot more to explore, but from what I can tell, the combat has moments of challenge, but it's definitely not Souls-like. The devs did say in their various, on their website, various other places, that they wanted the game to be approachable, especially to people who have never played a survival game before, and they've certainly hit that point, certainly a lot more so than making it a Souls-like, which would not be approachable at all. But yeah, it's really not Souls-like, so I don't quite know why these comparisons are out there, other than the fact there are fairly big bosses in it. But yeah, don't let that put you off, because it's really remarkably chilled, actually, once you get the hang of the game, which doesn't take very long. On the Valheim side of things, yeah, it looks sort of similar. It's similarly colourful. They're both survival crafting games, and there's a lot of base building. The base building is somewhat similar. Other than that, Valheim is a much more punishing sort of a game than Enshrouded is. Enshrouded is really not very punishing at all. It's, like I say, really vibey and chilled, so really enjoying this one. There have been a few occasions where I've got into sort of combat, things like that, and gotten a little bit overwhelmed, but it was generally a case of being underprepared and outnumbered, so it's not really a surprising outcome there. But it's not exactly painful if you do get beaten either, because you just respawn back at... Well, there's a few places you can respawn at. In this case, it was my base, and I just ran back over there and picked up the junk that I dropped, which is actually quite like Fallout in that regard. You don't lose anything other than your crafting materials that you've picked up. So, definitely cool in that regard. It's not too onerous. And I ran back and had another crack at what I was doing, and it went fine. It is early access. There's a couple of wobbles that they still need to iron out, which is about what you'd expect under the circumstances. As performance is not always stellar. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's iffy. Particularly around sunrise, sunset, the frames can drop off a little bit as the lighting changes and the colours change and everything. Biggest thing that I noticed making a difference to performance was the use of DLSS. I've changed some other settings, played around with it, and DLSS is the thing that really made the biggest difference there. Everything else was 1 or 2 frames here and there. I would imagine the same thing is true of FSR if you're on the AMD side, but that's something to look at if you do want to kind of stabilise those frames. For the most part, it's not too big a problem. You just get the odd thing around sunrise and sunset, really. So, pretty pleased with that. On that note, I should say, the game is currently only available on PC. The plan, apparently, is to release on other storefronts and other platforms, so consoles, once the game leaves early access. So how long that'll be, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what their plans are for the early access period, but for now, it is PC only. It's not horrifically demanding, so if it interests you, definitely take a look. But yeah, pretty cool so far. Running around, exploring, mining, chopping down trees and that sort of thing, harvesting resources in order to craft better gear and build a really quite cool base is standard fare for these sorts of games, and so far Enshrouded seems to be doing quite well at that. The location that I've built in here, we're going to have a look at my sort of starter base in just a sec, is right by the start of the game. There's a spot called the Cinder Vault where you start, then you kind of come out there, run down a hill, and it says, build your first base here as your introduction to the building system. That's where I built my base. So it's literally right out of the gate, and other bases will be coming in other locations for sure, but seemed like a good place to kick off a starter early game base. So, here is my early game starter base type thing. So, as I said before, I've not pushed out particularly far in the game. This location here we'll have a look at in a bit more detail in just a sec, but it is right where it tells you to build your first base to tutorialise all that, or at least initially do so. And yeah, we've got fairly basic building materials. There are some more advanced ones that I've sort of seen in menus, but I've not engaged with. The idea here is a farmstead with accommodation upstairs for the workers, that sort of thing, and sort of crafting functional spaces downstairs, and a big-ass barn. So that's basically the concept behind it. Those who are David Eddings fans may recognise the vague layout as being somewhat similar to that described in the Belgariad, but very loosely. Hopefully I haven't ruined anybody's childhood with that. So yeah, that's the basic concept I went for, and it works as a starter thing. Obviously, I'm the only person here, so there's that, but there's a little bit more space, there's sort of living space, and room to add more crafting features as and when I get them. So let's have a quick look into the menus and the map. I'm doing this on controller, so issues will occur, but this is where we are. There's the Cinder Vault that we start out in, right when you first spawn into the game, and literally just down the hill from it. So there you go. Nice flat area, and a very sensible place for them to point you for early tutorializing. So I decided to put a bit of a wall around some of the more open areas. There are no gates for walls, there are doors, but no gates. So I've basically used actually stone sort of double door frames. You can have single doors, you can have double doors. These are basically double door lintels that I've used as walls because I wanted something small. Our characters are oddly kind of Hobbit-like in some ways. So I decided to kind of keep that wall to a reasonable height. And a little scaffold there next to the barn is actually an item that you can build out a workbench and use to assist in your building. It's easy to place, relatively low cost, and very, very flexible about where you can put it. It'll just allow you to get up higher when you're building things, which is really, really helpful. There's another instance of me using a controller for the first time with no HUD. Figured out the door button eventually. So this is the barn I built. Being a farm type thing, it needed a barn. So I've used, again, kind of door lintels here to create the stalls for animals up front. This is not technically 2 pieces high, because one of the fun things about this building system is it uses cubes, and you can very, very carefully kind of adjust things to build in increments, or you can use entire pieces. In this case, I've used a combination of the two, so it's actually a bit of a weird 2/3 height, as opposed to being sort of 2 full sets or something. A little hayloft up here. I was sort of toying with the idea of putting a fence on the edge of here, but I kind of decided to leave it open in the end, as the options didn't quite give the vibe I was looking for. There we go. The windows, incidentally, are not sort of developer built. They are ones that I kind of left deliberately open in the barn there. So they work quite nicely. Can't really tell the difference, which is cool. It's really flexible like that in your ability to kind of customize. So everything is cube-based, and you can kind of adjust heights of things, and the snapping is toggleable, and it's really quite flexible. It's a really good, robust building system. So heading into the main structure, we'll have a look downstairs. This is the rough stone, really kind of basic stone building material, hence why it looks so rough, frankly. Really like that we can put manually sort of window frames in there, into the window gaps. These ones are actually the ones that are dev built, so they're just pieces that come with window gaps in them already, as opposed to ones I've cut in, which we'll have a look in a bit. So this is my will-be crafting space. I've just noticed that pillar doesn't reach the ceiling. I'll have to fix that. There we go. It just highlights that you can actually adjust the height of things sort of incrementally by turning the snapping off and positioning things manually. In this case, I did turn the snapping off to put the pillars in, because otherwise they were kind of one side of a line or the other, and I wanted them to be sat centered on the corner, which it allowed you to do quite nicely. So, heading upstairs, this is where my living quarters are, using a little bit of mixed materials. These fences, these railings, are actually the only fences I currently have available, and I had to individually place each section, which took some doing, and it did highlight one of the issues that I do have with the building systems at the moment, and that is that you're always in third person, and the character model kind of gets in the way. There's another issue. Trees coming back's great. Trees spawning through the walls of your house, not so great. So this is kind of my living space. It's one of the 2 larger ones. So that's my headcanon for it. I've got a little area to sit and eat. The better bed that I've crafted. You craft mattresses, and so far, single beds like this. You need to use a mattress to craft the larger bed. But the resource requirement goes up, so I kept it to just the one for now. Built a little fireplace there. The little unit inside it there at the bottom is the fireplace, and the chimney around it I built using the regular build system. Just put some posts and some walls around it and somewhat free placed it in, and it built quite a cool little chimney breast. So kind of better version of it in this room. I've got a few lighting options as well. I've got some torches on the walls there. Firefly lanterns are quite pretty. I like those. Don't put out as much light as it would be helpful if they did, but that kind of makes sense for a firefly lantern, doesn't it? There's another look at the chimney breast. This one came together a bit more neatly, I think. It was the second one I did, so not surprising. But it creates a nice little thing that will sit kind of cozy around the actual fireplace item, which you can cook on, and then build a chimney around it, which is entirely aesthetic. It doesn't actually serve a function, but came out okay. Had a few issues with getting chimney pots on the roof because they tend to want to float. I think I'm stretching the concept a little bit there, but it came out okay. I evoked the image we were looking for. Let's try and get that door open. Yeah, we'll head on inside. This is the other of the larger rooms. You see the bed there is basically the same as the one I've got, except it doesn't have the furs on it, it doesn't have a frame, so it's a simpler version. These windows, I wanted to mention, I actually cut in manually rather than using pieces that already had window frames in them, because technically they are on a join between two wall pieces, and I wanted them centered, which wasn't an option with the sort of prefab pieces. So put blank walls in, went over to the smallest option and just cut those windows into the wall, which worked really, really nicely. And then just slotted the frames in nicely. It was quite cool. Nice little corner fireplace there, which came out reasonably well for a first attempt, I think. There we go. A whole bunch of individual living quarters on the upper level here. Kind of wondering whether or not I should have used wooden floors for this. It might have suited it a little bit better rather than using the stone, but you know, tomato, tomato. It looks alright, I think. No rugs available to me yet or wall decorations. I don't know if those will become available later. I would imagine so, I would guess. Either I haven't unlocked them, or possibly they will be added later in the early access period. Who knows? I haven't got far enough to find out yet. But first impressions, it's pretty cool. We've got dishes and plates and bowls and things like that, and cups that we can put around. I got stuck on the door there. That one happens occasionally. And yeah, there's a few options there for decorating things up. You can add bits and pieces to kind of make your structures look a bit more interesting as well. That kind of fire altar thing is actually your base placement item. You have to have that down to claim an area for your land and for your base. And if you take it away, that will demolish your base. So there we go. Enshrouded. Pretty cool, I think. A lot of fun. Enjoying it so far. Doing really, really well for an early access launch, I think. Building system looks pretty robust, pretty fun. I've heard whispers of people building really complex things and really impressive sounding things already, so that's quite cool. I'm looking forward to getting more to grips with it as we push deeper into the game. So, hope you folks enjoyed that one. If you did, please consider dropping subs and likes. I very, very much appreciate. Down below, as always, social media links, merch store, channel memberships. If you want to support the channel that way, it really, really helps out. I very much appreciate it. And yeah, join us for live streams, obviously ongoing with Fallout 76 and Starfield. And yeah, Fallout content, Fallout builds coming, and Starfield builds, as well as more Enshrouded stuff. And more survival crafting based building games lined up in the coming weeks and months as well. So I do hope you keep an eye out and join us for those. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.